This is something I really found was so beneficial. It's far more important for me to feel good than to be right in an argument. More important to feel good than to be right. And as soon as we start to dare to think differently, to feel differently, we will begin to act differently, which means our world, our business, will give us different results. And if we keep elevating our mindset, elevating our energy, if we keep doing that as a basic mastery practice, the results will come in on the bottom line.
Hello, everybody. I'm Shivani Gupta. I'm your host. I'm so excited. I met this amazing woman who doesn't live that far away from me, we realized, but we met in Bali. And one of the things we were speaking about was the impact that she's had. And I thought she would be such a great podcast guest on this particular podcast. I'm so excited to introduce Diane Demetre to you. Let me tell you a little bit about her. She's an award-winning business leader. She's authored a dozen books. She's a keynote speaker, and she's an expert in transformational leader. And she's blended over 40 years of multi-industry experience with deep understanding of human potential. Her career is marked by entrepreneurial success and corporate excellence, and it spans across a bunch of things, including luxury tourism, national transport, airline service sectors. She's also been honoured with an International Women's Day Leadership Award and the Australian Enterprise Most Empowering Leadership and Mindset Speaker for 2024. And she helps bridge the generational divide and transform the millennial work crisis. Welcome, Diane.
Thank you, Shivani. It's wonderful to be here on this beautiful day. Beautiful day.
Yeah, thank you for being here. Now, out of the span of 40 plus years, there must have been so many challenges, moments of adversity, things that you've dealt with. I'm just wondering, Diane, if you would share one or two of those with us and how you overcame them. How did that tough, horrific moments or challenging moments create you into who you are? Would love to hear a little bit about that.
I think my biggest crisis moment came when, it's a little bit like Charles Dickens. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. So I scored the top job in Australia way back in 1985 as the assistant director and choreographer at Jupiter's Casino on the Gold Coast, and worked with the legendary Las Vegas director, Jerry Jackson. When he went back to Vegas, it was my responsibility to keep the show with the 40 cast and the 10 crew and the 10-piece orchestra on track. And that went very well for the first year. Then the second year he came back, I was his assistant. And it was during that year that the producer invited me to a production meeting in his hotel room, which I thought was very odd at the time. But, type A personality, off we go, high achiever. And it was in that room that he made his intentions very, very clear. And at that stage, I backed out of the room, fumbled over my words, fumbled over my feet and said, no, thank you. He'd offered me the top job in the country, actually, to replace Jerry for the next show. And within 11 days, I received a notification that I'd been sacked for being too fat. And as I say in my keynote, hey, not too fat to sleep with, but too fat to continue in the show. And so from there, as I say, he'd picked the wrong girl. I put on my warrior suit and we went off at that time to the Australian Arbitration and Conciliation Commission because there was no Industrial Relations Act in this country. So we went to court. I was reinstated. He sacked me on sick leave. I took him back to court and the commissioner didn't reinstate me, even though there were no grounds for my dismissal, because he feared for my health. And at that point, I was so humiliated because I'd been splashed across the front pages in Australia, dancer sacked for being too fat. I mean, it was so humiliating for a 30-year-old. And so I just went into hiding. I was heartbroken. I lost my career. No one would hire me. I was a whistleblower. And so I went through that dark night of the soul where everything I'd worked for all my life, I'd had the top job. I was about to move up that stairway to heaven, as we used to call it years ago, and take the top job in Australia. And because I refused my producer's sexual advances, he sacked me for apparently being too fat. So I spent quite a long time sobbing on the bathroom floor, having a party, as a party of what is it? A self-pity party for one is what it was, until it was very interesting. My dresser stood in the threshold of my bedroom, said, "You've got to get up." I said, "I've got nothing to live for." And there was that epiphanous moment when a voice inside my head said, "Dare more." And so I went, okay. So I got up, got out of my pajamas, and reading was my second love. So I went to a secondhand bookstore, which I'd never gone to because I was a book snob. Everything had to be new. And when I was walking through that bookstore, a book literally flew off the shelf and landed at my feet. And my boyfriend was there, so I have a witness. And I bent down, I picked up the book, and for the princely sum of $2, I was holding the first book written by my Broadway idol, Shirley MacLaine, out on a limb in my hands. I ran home, I read it, I had my own epiphany after reading it, and my life changed. And from that moment on, instead of saying, why me, I worked out that there was a whole other consciousness going on that I needed to consciously and deliberately tap into. And from then on, it's been an onward and upward journey to facilitate the evolution of human consciousness in my world.
Wow. I thank you for sharing that. I really love that you shared that with me. And our listeners and our viewers, because we hear of those stories, but to be able to talk about that challenge, and I think the beauty in what you just spoke about there was, so many times, Diane, that I'm speaking to people, often that adversity or that challenge becomes that transformational moment. And I just heard you describe that so beautifully. Um, in your career so far, and I know that you've done a bunch of different things, and congratulations on all the awards as well. You've come across, people that have grown their businesses. You've also grown your business. Have you got one or two gold nuggets in terms of what's been your experience that's really helped and what you've witnessed really helped growing your business? I'd love for you to share those couple of golden nuggets.
With my speaking and my training and facilitation, I like to make complex issues as simple as possible. So what I have done in my business and what I've done with my staff, I had a workforce of over 200 here in Australia, and I've led diverse international workforces culturally as well. And I bring it down to three things. And that is, I always encourage, particularly my leaders, but also the workforce, to dare to think differently, dare to feel differently, and dare to act differently. Because until we actually start to think, feel, and act differently to how we were doing it before, we will just create the same results. And we've heard that quote by Einstein. And so I really do encourage everybody to dare, just dare to think differently, feel differently, and act differently. Think outside the box and actually make sure, this is very important, and this is what people don't really get at this point in time in many ways, is that everybody talks on the planet about we're in an energy crisis. The energy crisis we're in is the energy that we bring to our workplace every day, and the energy with how we show up. We have to keep reaching for that higher resonance, keep living with feeling positive expectation, optimism, hope, joy, love. Keep reaching up that emotional, energetic scale. Because once we do that, once this is something I really found was so beneficial. It's far more important for me to feel good than to be right in an argument. More important to feel good than to be right. And as soon as we start to dare to think differently, to feel differently, we will begin to act differently, which means our world, our business will give us different results. And if we keep elevating our mindset, elevating our energy, if we keep doing that as a basic mastery practice, the results will come in on the bottom line. For 12 years, I had a low attrition rate of over 5%. It was under 5%. So in my workforce, across 200 staff, we kept our attrition rates to 5%, which
That is
means we were doing,
unbelievable.
yeah, we were doing something right. And this is what we were doing. I was encouraging my leaders, and then they were encouraging their teams to master themselves firstly. So it's all about, once we get personal success, we can then have interpersonal success, and then we can have collective success. So mastery has always been very important in my organization. So I've always looked at doing personal and professional development hand in hand, not one, not the other. You've got to put them both together. And so that would be my recommendation for anybody in business. Master yourself first, and then share those techniques and ideas with your workforce, daring them to think, feel, and act differently along the way.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. And just extending that a little bit around people. And so you've had a workforce of over 200 people. You present to thousands of people a year, tens of thousands of people a year. And so talk to us about, and that attrition rate of 5%, which is very, very difficult. In fact, most leaders I'm speaking to, Diane, are constantly complaining and challenged by how do we actually get the right people? And once we've got them, how do we keep them? Because so many of them are leaving. And so what would be your top 2 or 3 tips, extending from that question, that really helps having the right people and making sure that we treat them well and keep them?
Firstly, recruit slowly. As much as you may want to recruit really fast, recruit slowly. Take your time. Develop your intuitive guidance along the way. Don't just go from the piece of paper or what's happening here. Whatever you do, endeavor to recruit slowly. Have face-to-face meetings wherever you can, because the energy you get back from the person in a face-to-face human connection at a meeting is very, very valuable. And I've also always said to my leaders as they recruit, when in doubt, don't. If there's a niggling in your solar plexus region, you're going, I'm not sure, park it on the back burner and give yourself a bit more time. I think businesses do themselves a disservice by recruiting quickly. Oh, that's the best out of a bad bunch. We'll go that way. It ends up being a nightmare. You waste money, you waste time, you waste training and recruitment. Another thing with recruitment is make sure you have a very detailed recruitment assessment form. Drill down into the person, but what's important here is drill down into their character, not just the professional skills they bring, but give them role plays of what would you do in this situation? And put them in situations in the workplace that may never happen, but really push their thinking and really push their parameters, because you want to know what they would do in this situation. So that's part of recruitment. Then once you bring them into the organization, and if you've recruited well, now's the time you really make the investment, and you invest in them, and you invest in them as an employee. But more than that, you give them buy-in to the organization and you bring them in. Now, it's very important to have training manuals, have everything systemized, have everything on training manuals. There's so many businesses I go into who don't have systems, don't have manuals, don't have SOPs. You must have that. You can't expect a new employee to be able to do what somebody who's been there even a year can do unless you've given it to them on paper or nowadays on an iPad. But it's got to be there. And make sure you audit. Checklist, 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 checklist. That's not just for you to inspect, but that's for them to actually train their brain. We need to be training the brain of our employees more and more. And of course, part of that is engagement. Get them to buy into the organization, incentivize financially, but incentivize through actually taking quality time with them. Gary Chapman, in his book, The 5 Languages of Love, writes it so clearly, which is quality time. Quality time builds relationships. And so as leaders, we must give our people time, get away from the emails and go and sit with them, talk with them. enjoy them, connect. Human connection is so vital. And also there's another aspect of that is appreciation. Appreciation. And appreciation is transformative, particularly when we share it generously. And that's not just saying, oh, you've done a good job. It's about really praising and thanking your people for who they are and what they bring to the business. And if we were doing that, we wouldn't have this huge generational divide. We wouldn't have a millennial work crisis, because the millennials know one very important thing. They understand that purpose and mission means everything, and that a life without purpose and mission is wasted. And as baby boomers and as, Gen Xers, we need to wake up to that and go, right, let's buy in your purpose and your mission, and let's work together rather than dividing us up. And we've had a world, unfortunately, over these last 10 years that's wanted to put labels on absolutely everything. I'm not a label lover. I will strip off the labels right, left, and centre. And excuse me for viewers who may be watching, but DEI and everything else, take the labels off and just say we are all one humanity. Let's come together under that umbrella rather than labeling everybody as something else. And let's come back together. So it's great. It's a wonderful time in business. It's challenging, but it's a wonderful time because it's really the first time that I can remember, and I've been here for quite some time, where we've had 4 generations in the workforce at once. Now that's exciting to me. And that's why I go into organizations and help them come together. And how do we bring them together? And how do we make everyone thrive so that the bottom line increases? Our bottom line went up by 50% in the first year. We compounded that 60% in the second year. Then we compounded it again by 60% in the third year. All because there was this buy-in and this engagement and this enthusiasm. So that's it in a nutshell. Sorry.
So many nuggets in there. So many. I asked for one or two. People that are watching or listening, rewind that and listen to that again. There were so many things I resonate with there, Diane, because
Yes.
when you were speaking about that, I'm like, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I've written about some of those things too. You've done so many things. Tell us about your future aspirations, whether it's a year, 5-year, 20-year BHAG. Tell us about some of the things that are really important for you that you want to continue to do or do differently.
One of the things I'd like to continue to do, and that is, of course, keynote speaking and sharing this message across not just Australia, but I'd like to be doing a lot more international travel with my keynote speaking, and to reaching into organisations and helping them with this particular crisis and this challenge that people are going through, and just getting to as many people as I can and sharing with them my wealth of experience and my my mindset on this, and that change isn't that hard. You see, neurologically, we make change in 2.3 seconds in our brain. And so we've been fed all this information that change is hard and it's 90 days and it's this and that. There's a whole new way of looking at how we can literally shift the consciousness and shift our human perspective to keep up with the acceleration that is happening. And as I say, everybody's about AI, but I think it's a bit more like UI. We need to be looking at universal intelligence. So for me, getting out as far and wide as I can and reaching as many people as I can to just give them that nearly it's a permission to be curious and to step right out on the leading edge of thought. And why don't we look at it this way? And because I weave in the quantum physics about how this all comes together, because intentionality creates reality. That's what turns me on. That's what plugs me in. And that's what I'd love to be doing for the rest of my life as much as possible. And there'll be more books along the way whenever I can find time to do that. But nevertheless, yes, that's really my aspirations.
Love that. I love that. I also love the fact that you weave in quantum physics into that, because I've come across some speakers that have done it, but it hasn't quite landed with me. But having seen some of your reels and having you on the podcast, the way that you build that, and it's super practical, because there's a way to be able to go, okay, how do I apply that to my business, or how do I apply that to my team? Diane, if people want to connect with you and they want to look at some of your work, what are the best platforms to find you?
My website at dianedemetre.com. There you'll find a whole range of information. So, just run along all the various tabs and have a look. You'll find my books there too. I've had a career as a fiction and non-fiction author. And if anybody was interested in reading about or listening to the audiobook of my story of my crisis, they can find that on my website. That one's called Dare. That's my memoir. And also, I'd love them to connect with me on LinkedIn, which is Diane Demetre Speaks on LinkedIn. And then there's Facebook, Diane Demetre Official, Instagram, Diane Demetre Official. But I'm predominantly on LinkedIn and, of course, my website. And please reach out to me. My phone number's on my website. I'm easy to contact. My email address is everywhere, very easy to contact. And I just love having chats with people and finding out what's going on, because we have to keep this human connection going. And it's really, really important to do that. So reach out, have a chat, get onto my Calendly link and just, say, hi, how are you going? So there's lots there.
Gorgeous. Thank you so much, Diane. I'll get you to hang on for a minute after we stop recording, but such a pleasure having you. Thank you for being on today.
Thank you so much, Shivani, for the opportunity.
Thank you for tuning in to Engage and Retain People podcast. I hope that today's podcast sparks a new and maybe one idea that you can bring back to your business right away. Take time to connect, listen, and invest in your people, because they are your most valuable asset. If you found value in today's conversation, please subscribe and share this episode with other fellow entrepreneurs and business leaders. And don't forget to leave a review. It helps us manage and reach more people just like you. Join us next week for more actionable insights to keep you on the path to engage and retain your people. Until then, keep going. Keep investing in your people and yourself. This is Shivani. Stay inspired.